Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast.
Good to be back.
Today, we are tackling a really wild one. Chijet motor.
Uh-huh. Definitely one that's caught people's attention lately.
Yeah, if you follow the markets at all, you've probably seen the headlines. I mean, this story has been absolutely manic.
That's one word for it. Extreme volatility.
Exactly. We're looking at a stock that just a short while ago was trading for pennies. It was facing like imminent delisting.
Right on the edge.
And then boom, it skyrockets over 120% in a day, all on the promise of this huge potential investment and a complete strategic shift into digital assets.
It's a dramatic turnaround story, potentially.
Potentially being the key word. So today, our mission is to really sift through the information we have on Chijet Motor. We've got the financial reports, the compliance stuff, the big announcements.
Oh, with pieces.
And we want to figure out, is this recent jump the real deal, the start of a genuine recovery? Or is it maybe just a speculative trap? Basically, is now a good time to buy?
That's the million-dollar question. Or maybe the billion-dollar question in this case.
Huh? Yeah, good point. And as always, if you find this analysis helpful, please do hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and definitely leave a comment below.
We really do read them.
We do. And hey, if there's a specific company you're curious about and want us to look into for a future analysis, just drop the name in the comments. We love getting suggestions.
Absolutely. Okay, so Chijet Motor. That volatility you mentioned, it's really central here. You can't really get a handle on the potential upside without first understanding just how dire the situation looked only weeks ago.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah, the crisis was severe. So our job today is to kind of synthesize all these facts, lay them out so you can see the whole picture.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, and the highly speculative.
Okay, where do we start? Back with the trouble.
Let's start right there. Compliance and financial stress, because that really sets the stage. Over the summer, thinking August, September 2025, Chijet Motor got hit with some serious regulatory pressure from Nasdaq.
The delisting notices.
Exactly. The sources clearly show they failed not one, but two minimum market value requirements. That's a big red flag.
And these requirements are like non-negotiable gatekeepers for staying listed, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's financial jargon, MVLS, MVPHS. What does failing those actually tell us in plain English?
It tells you the market had basically given them a failing grade. The MVLS, that's market value of listed securities, and MVPHS is market value of publicly held shares. Failing both means the company's total value and the value held by the public had just cratered.
So low that Nasdaq was saying, look, you don't meet our standards anymore.
Precisely. It raises serious questions about the company's viability and financial health in the eyes of the exchange.
Okay, that sounds like immense pressure. What's the timeline? Do they have a deadline to fix this mess?
They did get a temporary reprieve, a stay of delisting while they appeal, but the clock is definitely ticking. How long? They have until February 11th, 2026. That's the date. They need to regain compliance by then.
Wow. February 2026. That's a huge overhang then. You really can't forget that date if this turnaround plan doesn't work.
They could be kicked off the exchange. Simple as that. It's a critical risk factor.
And adding to that sort of operational stress, we also saw signs of financial trouble spilling over into their actual share structure, right? Back in September.
Yes, good point. In September 2025, they had to issue, let me check the number, 640,850 ordinary shares.
To who?
To holders of something called contingent value rights, or CVRs.
CVRs, remind me what those are again.
They're basically IOUs tied to performance, often issued in mergers or financing deals. They promise extra shares or value if the company hits certain targets, operational goals, financial milestones, that kind of thing.
Okay, so the fact that Chijet issued those shares means...
It means they missed the targets. They failed to meet the milestones they'd previously agreed to in some business deal.
Ouch. So failing operationally meant they had to immediately dilute their existing shareholders, handing out hundreds of thousands of new shares. That just screams underlying problems.
It really does. And when you connect that to their latest financials, the picture gets clearer, and not in a good way.
Let's hear the numbers.
Trailing 12 months revenue was just $4.11 million, which is a huge drop year over year, and the net losses just kept piling up. We're talking negative $65.32 million. Again, trailing 12 months.
$65 million in losses on $4 million in revenue.
Yeah. They were burning through cash, the core business wasn't growing, and they were facing regulatory death row with Nasdaq. It was grim.
That sounds like the absolute definition of a company on the ropes. which makes it even crazier.
Mm.
How does that company suddenly jump 124% in one day, with volume hitting, what was it, 221 million shares?
Madness, right. That's where the narrative just completely flips on its head.
So what caused it?
It was all driven by news of a Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU, outlining a potential, and I stress potential, $1 billion investment.
Okay, hold on. $1 billion for a company whose market cap was scraping like $3 million just before that, right after a delisting notice from some undisclosed party. That sounds, well, less like a strategic investment and more like a desperate, speculative Hail Mary pass. How solid is this MOU? Is this $1 billion real?
That skepticism is completely justified, and it's really the core issue here. The key word is potential. An MOU is non-binding. It's an agreement to agree, basically.
So no guarantees?
None whatsoever. We absolutely need to see an official SEC 8K filing. That's the document that would confirm the funds are real and secured. Until then, it's just talk.
But there was some real money, wasn't there? Something smaller.
Yes, and that's important. They did provide a tangible sign of maybe good faith. A smaller private placement actually closed on October 6, 2025.
Okay, tell us about that. How much and from who?
That deal raised $20 million. It came from non-U.S. institutional investors.
$20 million is better than nothing, but it's a long way from $1 billion. What were the terms?
The units were priced very low, which tells you something, too. One ordinary share at just 15 cents, plus 3 warrants you could exercise later at $0.0818.
Super low prices. So, okay, $20 million is real cash. It gives them some breathing room, helps with liquidity.
Exactly. Immediate relief. But you're right, the market reaction, that huge stock jump, that wasn't about the $20 million. It was all about the promise of the $1 billion.
And this capital, whether it's $20 million or potentially $1 billion, it isn't just about patching holes, right? It's meant to fuel a massive change in what the company even is.
That's the narrative. They're trying to completely change their identity, shed the old skin.
How?
This transformation thesis is what grabbed all the speculative attention. They announced they hired Jason Miller. He's described as a blockchain veteran.
Okay.
His title is Chief Operating Officer, COO. And his job, his only job really, is to lead a comprehensive digital currency treasury strategy.
Digital currency treasury. So crypto.
Yep. This isn't some side project. They're positioning this as the new foundation of the company.
So wait, Chijet Motor is trying to use its distressed situation, plus this potential $1 billion, to basically become a holding company for Bitcoin and stuff.
That's essentially the plan. They seem to be pivoting hard away from the car business, which, let's face it, is tough and needs a ton of capital.
And they have specific plans for this crypto strategy.
They do. They've said initial Bitcoin and Ethereum buys are planned for Q4 2025, so like right now. That marks a very serious move into digital assets. A move away from making vehicles.
What's the CEO saying about all this? Melissa Chen?
She framed that potential billion-dollar commitment as an extraordinary vote of confidence. She argued it gives them the flexibility they need to move into faster-growing areas.
Like what?
Things like crypto custody, holding digital assets for others, and potentially doing mergers and acquisitions within the whole digital asset space.
Crypto custody, that's a whole different business.
Totally different. They're basically aiming to be an early mover in digital asset infrastructure storage. If they pull it off, it completely recasts the company. Forget cars, think crypto.
That narrative is definitely flashy. Very 2025. But okay, let's bring it back down to earth for a second. We need to remember the business they're trying to escape from.
Absolutely critical. We need to ground this.
Let's talk about the company that actually lost that $65 million we mentioned earlier. What does the underlying car business even look like?
Right, the hard numbers. Before all this pivot news hit, the financials were rough. Revenue in 2024 was only $6.92 million.
Okay.
And that was down 27% from the year before. A big contraction. The net loss for 2024, negative $46.90 million.
Almost $47 million lost on less than $7 million in sales. Yikes.
Well, profit margins deeply negative, lots of debt, high leverage, and as we discussed, serious worries about just having enough cash to operate. That was the picture before the MOU news.
So, high leverage, burning cash, shrinking sales, in a super competitive sector. What was their specific niche? Were they making anything interesting?
They were focused on NEVs, new energy vehicles in China, mostly passenger cars and some commercial EVs.
Were they a big player, like NIO or BYD?
Oh, no, not even close. Not a tier 1 player. But they had some operations, some assets. They had a relationship with an Italian design firm, Torino Design. And their strategies seemed to be targeting expansion into, like, rural parts of China. maybe hoping competition would be less intense there.
But it clearly wasn't enough.
Clearly not. The losses from making NEVs were just, well, unsustainable. You could argue this pivot into digital assets isn't just strategic. It might be the only lifeline they had left.
So the whole competitive edge now hinges on, can they actually pull off this crypto thing?
Exactly. It's a massive gamble. Success means maybe counterbalancing the disaster in the car division. Failure means, well, probably back to square one or worse.
It really is two different stories here, isn't it? The failing car company versus this potential crypto moonshot.
Completely bifurcated.
Which makes sense why the trading is so crazy. Let's shift gears to that. Because right now, this feels like a stock strictly for momentum traders, right?
Yeah.
Not really for value investors.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. The volatility is just off the charts. We measured it around 142% over the last 3 months.
142% volatility. What does that even mean in practical terms?
It means huge, unpredictable price swings, massive moves up or down, very quickly. It favors traders who are comfortable with extremely high risk and fast action, not for the faint of heart.
Okay, looking at technical charts, the price right now is way below the key moving averages. The 50-day simple moving average is up around 91 cents. The 200-day is even higher at $1.62. Doesn't it usually mean a stock is historically oversold?
Technically, yes. That big gap between the current price and those averages often suggests oversold conditions based on past trends. However,
There's always a however with this stuff.
right. In this case, the fundamentals were so weak and the delisting threat was so real that those historical trend lines are almost irrelevant right now.
So the price isn't reacting to trends, it's reacting purely to news.
Exactly. It's news-driven, event-driven, not technical-driven. Although, interestingly, the RSI, the 14-day Relative Strength Index, which measures momentum, it's actually pretty neutral, sitting around 42.31 last check. So it's not screaming overbought euphoria, but it's also not showing total panic selling at this very moment. It's kind of waiting.
Okay, so for those momentum traders who are watching this, maybe trying to play the swings, what are the key price levels they should be watching based on the recent action?
Okay, as of the last data point, October 11th, the stock was trading in a pretty tight range, roughly $0 and $16.18.
Tiny range.
Very tight. Now, the critical level, the sort of line in the sand for support, looks to be around 0 and 7 cents.
7 cents, okay.
Yeah. If it breaks below that, especially with volume, the whole turnaround story, the trading thesis based on the pivot, likely falls apart completely. That's the danger zone.
And on the upside, what's the resistance?
The first key hurdle on the way up is around Zavizro 21 cents. If it can break through that level, again, ideally on strong volume,
Then what?
then it could signal another push higher, potentially retesting the next major resistance level around 0.2 and 27 cents.
So $0.07 on the downside, $0.21, and then $0.20 on the upside.
That seems to be the framework. So looking out over the next, say, 3 months, if things don't totally implode, like if the $1 million MOU doesn't get officially canceled, the likely bullish trading range seems to be between that $0.07 floor and maybe the $0.27 ceiling.
Got it. A wide volatile range. Now, technicals and trading ranges are often driven by catalysts, news events.
Always.
So looking ahead, what are the immediate catalysts, things happening in the next, say, 3 months that could push this stock toward that $1.77 floor or up towards $0.27?
Okay, the most immediate thing giving us a bit more clarity is their Q3 2025 earnings release. That's scheduled very soon, October 14th.
What are we looking for there?
Crucial updates. How much cash do they have left after getting that $20 million placement? What are the ongoing costs? Is the revenue decline in the car business maybe slowing down or still accelerating? We need to see if the bleeding has stopped, basically.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What else?
Beyond their own reporting, there are market mechanics to watch, especially with a stock like this that probably has a low float, meaning not that many shares are readily available for trading.
Right. Low float means small buys or sells can have big impacts.
Exactly. So watch the ETF rebalancing period. That's usually around mid-November, say November 15th. And also the period for notified institutional buys.
How do we track those?
Through required filings like SEC Forms 13G or 13D, those usually indicate larger shareholders. We'd expect to see those around December 8th, give or take.
And because the float is low?
Any significant institutional move, buying or selling, could cause a really big, disproportionate short-term price swing. It adds another layer of volatility.
Okay. And then looking further out into early next year.
The big test for the new strategy comes with their Q4 2025 earnings. But maybe even more importantly, they've signaled a digital asset strategy update around the end of January 2026.
So that's when we find out if the crypto plan is real.
That's the hope. Is Jason Miller actually buying Bitcoin and Ethereum? Is the crypto custody idea starting to take shape? Or was it all just talk? That update will be critical.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize all this. We've got the compliance crisis, the terrible old financials, this massive speculative investment, the crypto pivot, upcoming earnings, market events. How do you boil down the overall risk assessment?
It really comes down to execution risk. That's the primary thing. And the biggest piece of that is, will the $1 billion investment actually happen? Does it close?
We need that 8K filing.
We absolutely need that official SEC confirmation that the funds are secured. If that falls through, well, all the old problems come rushing back. The liquidity crisis and that February 2026 Nasdaq delisting deadline suddenly looks impossible to meet.
It feels like there's a total disconnect here.
Mhm.
Our internal source analysis, based on all this info, gives it a surprisingly bullish 8 out of 10 rating.
Yeah.
But that's based entirely on the potential transformation from the capital.
Oh.
Yet you look at a standard AI analyst, like from TipRanks, and it rates the stock underperform, which makes sense given the current financials and risks. How do you reconcile those two views?
The conflict is the story. It's the investment thesis itself. The near-term outlook is just incredibly event-driven. It's almost a binary bet.
Explain binary.
The 8 out of 10 rating, that's looking at the potential future. It's betting on Chijet becoming a well-funded digital asset growth company. The underperform rating, that's firmly planted in the current reality. An ailing car company drowning in losses and compliance issues.
So as an investor, you have to decide which company you're actually betting on.
Exactly. Are you investing in the struggling NEV maker in China? Or are you investing in the speculative promise of a crypto custody pivot? There are almost two different entities in one stock ticker right now.
That really is the key takeaway, isn't it? It's binary. Failure to get that $1 billion or failure to actually execute the digital pivot that reinforces all the old risks. Compliance, liquidity, the stock probably collapses.
It's likely worthless, yeah.
But if they execute successfully, if the money comes through and the crypto strategy gains traction, it fundamentally rewrites the entire company profile. The old problems could become just history, footnotes.
Precisely. And that huge potential shift is what fuels the speculation. Which leads us, I guess, to the final provocative thought for listeners to chew on.
All right, let's hear it.
Given the sheer scale of this proposed change, I mean, think about it. A traditional Chinese electric vehicle maker suddenly trying to become a major player in digital asset custody, almost overnight.
It's a radical shift.
Totally radical.
Yes.
So the question is, what are the real regulatory implications of that? What are the operational hurdles? How do you even begin to properly assess the risk when the entire business model is being torn down and rebuilt in just a few months right in front of you?
That massive uncertainty, that's the gamble.
That's the gamble. High risk, potentially high reward, but loaded with unknowns.
Well, that uncertainty certainly makes for a fascinating story to watch. Thank you for walking us through this incredibly complex situation.
My pleasure. Lots to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. We hope this analysis helps you, our listeners, navigate this complex market. Keep learning, keep questioning, and we'll catch you on the next analysis.